Hi, I'm Calder. 2 weeks after my brother's wedding, the one I paid $77,000 for, the videographer called me at 2 a.m., his voice shaking. He said, "Sir, I found something you were never supposed to see. Come now, don't tell the family." What I saw wasn't just betrayal. It was the moment I realized I'd been the family's wallet, their scapegoat, their silence keeper. For decades, they smiled in my face and plotted behind my back. That footage, it didn't just expose a lie. It opened every wound they'd ever disguised as love. Now I have to decide, do I burn it all down or walk away with the truth alone? Would you forgive family after that? Or would you finally stop protecting the people who never once protected you? Because I did, and nothing was ever the same again. I woke up with a jolt, the sound of my phone slicing through the thick silence of the night. 2:13 a.m. flashed across the screen, and for a split second, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe a wrong number or a pocket dial. But the name on the screen made my stomach tighten. Mason Dunn. Mason was the videographer I hired for Gareth's wedding 2 weeks ago, the one I paid $77,000 for. Not that I ever brought that number up out loud to anyone, not even once. I answered, "Hello? Mr. Holt?" Mason's voice was shaking. "Sir, I need you to come to my studio. Right now." There was a pause, then a whisper. "Don't tell anyone else, please." My heart rate jumped. "What's going on?" "I found something. In the footage," he said quickly. "It's bad. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. But you need to see it. Alone." "You're talking about the wedding video?" I tried to sit up, fully awake now. "You're calling me at 2 a.m. about a wedding video?" "Please," he begged. "Just come. Don't tell your family. Midtown studio. Door'll be unlocked." And just like that, he hung up. The air outside was unusually still as I drove through Houston's empty streets. A few yellow streetlights cast long shadows, but the city felt hollow, like it had stepped aside to let me pass. I couldn't shake the unease. Mason sounded terrified. And Mason isn't the dramatic type. I remembered him at the wedding, quiet, efficient, almost invisible behind his lens. He never got in the way. And now he's waking me up like it's a matter of life or death. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was some weird audio glitch. Maybe someone said something inappropriate near a mic. But if that was the case, why not just email me? Why whisper? Why say don't tell your family? My mind wandered to that day. The grand ballroom. The ridiculous flower arch Selena insisted on. The tension under everyone's smiles. I remembered that awkward toast where my name wasn't mentioned once, even though I footed the entire bill. And then it hit me. Mason wouldn't risk his reputation over nothing. Not at 2 a.m. Not like this. His studio sat in a narrow strip mall on a side street near Midtown. The sign over the door blinked, half lit. I pulled into the lot, killed the engine, and took a deep breath before stepping out. The front door creaked open at my touch. Inside, Mason stood at his editing station, eyes wide and bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "You locked the door?" he asked, barely above a whisper. "No, should I?" He rushed past me and flipped the deadbolt. Let's be safe." I didn't like this. He motioned to a leather chair in front of a monitor. "Sit, please." I lowered myself slowly. "Mason, start from the beginning." He took a breath. "One of the stationary cameras. We set it on a side table during the reception. I was backing up footage earlier tonight and realized that camera, it never stopped recording. For 4 hours. I didn't notice until now." He clicked a few keys. The screen lit up with a timestamp, 11:02 p.m. I thought it was just ambient noise, but 5 minutes in, I heard voices. Then I saw them. He hit play. The frame was tilted. Someone had set the camera down lazily. The picture wasn't centered, but I recognized the room. A side lounge off the ballroom. Empty. Until 3 figures stepped into view. Gareth, Selena, and my cousin, Craig. My heart picked up. They were laughing at first, joking. Then their tone shifted. Selena crossed her arms. Gareth looked frustrated. Craig rolled his eyes. I leaned forward. Then I heard my name. Not loud, not clear, but unmistakable. Calder. I froze. Selena scoffed. He's not going to say anything. He never does. Craig chuckled. Guy's been paying their bills since forever. Let him. It's what he does. My jaw clenched. Gareth smirked. You think he even notices? He's like, background. That last word hit harder than I expected. Background. Mason pressed pause. I didn't want to believe it, he said quietly. But there's more. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My ears were ringing. I sat back, eyes locked on the paused frame. For years, I convinced myself I was just being the responsible one, the helper, the rock. I paid for things because I could, not because I had to. But this was something else. I felt like a guest at my own family's party. I was invisible, and they knew it. Worse, they counted on it. I tried to find excuses. Maybe I misheard. Maybe it was sarcasm. But I couldn't deny what I felt in that moment. Not hurt, not yet, not even betrayal. Just clarity. A slow, icy understanding that something had always been wrong. I just never looked closely enough to see it. Mason hovered near the desk. That's just the first 5 minutes. I turned to him. There's more? I asked, my voice dry. He nodded, and his voice dropped to a whisper. What you're about to see will change everything. Mason didn't move right away. His hand hovered over the keyboard, like even he wasn't sure if pressing play was the right thing to do. I gave him a slow nod, tight, silent. My eyes stayed on the frozen frame of Gareth's smirk from the previous clip. That smugness etched into my brain like a bad scar forming too early. Mason clicked. The footage jumped forward by a few minutes, still from the same odd angle. Just off-center, the edge of a couch and some floral arrangements partly in view. The audio buzzed, muffled at first. Then it sharpened like someone twisted a dial. The hum of music bled in from the ballroom, distant but steady. Selena's voice came in clear. You're seriously putting him up near the head table? Gareth laughed. It's not like he's royalty. Let the man sit by the kitchen. He'll be fine. I didn't blink. He doesn't need to be front and center, he went on. God, the guy shows up, writes a check, and expects what? Fireworks? There was a small beat. Then Aunt Ruby, soft, dismissive, said, He should be grateful he's even here. I didn't realize my hand was gripping the side of the chair until my knuckles started aching. Selena snorted. I swear, if I have to include him in one more photo lineup, I'll scream, like we're supposed to fake some happy family moment. Come on. I leaned forward slightly, as if proximity would soften the blow. It didn't. They knew I was paying for everything. And yet the resentment in their voices wasn't about gratitude. It was about containment, like I was some threat to their control. Then Gareth again. He paid for it, sure, but that doesn't mean he gets a spotlight. Selena responded with something that burned worse than the rest. Exactly. He's not the face of this family. We can't let him take over. I sat there, still, watching a version of my family I didn't recognize, but somehow always suspected. It all came back like a punch to the gut. The crooked place card at the reception, my name misspelled, Cauldron. I had laughed it off. Made a joke about how maybe I was conjured out of thin air to write the checks. I hadn't realized it then, but that wasn't just a typo. That was a summary of my position in the family. Useful, but not real. A placeholder. The table I was seated at was near the hallway. Next to a door, the servers kept swinging open. Every time I tried to enjoy a bite, someone rushed past with a tray of half-eaten steaks or clinking wine glasses, and nobody sat with me for long. They always drifted away, to the main tables, the family tables. Back then, I told myself it was nothing. Don't make it weird, Calder. Don't pull attention. But now, hearing them talk like that, it wasn't some oversight. It was intentional. I didn't say a word. Mason didn't push. He just sat nearby, letting the silence stretch. The shame came first. That dull, crawling kind that starts in your chest and spreads through your limbs. Shame for not seeing it. For pretending I was included. For funding a celebration I wasn't even part of in spirit. Then anger. Not the loud kind. The cold kind. The kind that roots itself in the stomach and grows. I tried to tell myself they were drunk. It was a long night. Weddings are stressful, but those weren't slip-ups. Those were unguarded truths, shared in confidence between people who thought I'd never hear a word of it. But now I had. All of it. Mason eventually paused the clip. "There's more," he said gently. "I just thought you might want a second." I nodded slowly, barely moving my neck. "It's not just that they talked about you," Mason added, his voice careful. "It's what they were planning that night. That's in the next part." I didn't answer him right away. My thoughts were thick, like I was trying to swim through tar. Planning? I kept hearing Gareth's voice in my head. We can't let him take over. What the hell did that mean? My heart thudded in my chest as Mason hovered his hand over the next clip, his eyes full of warning. Mason pressed play, and I leaned forward. I told myself I was ready, steady enough now to watch whatever came next, but that was a lie. My breathing was shallow, my palms damp. I wasn't scared in the usual sense. I wasn't afraid of blood or violence. I was afraid of hearing more of what I already knew, but never wanted to admit. The footage resumed. The camera angle had shifted slightly, just enough to show the edge of the lounge where they stood. You could see someone had nudged the table earlier, maybe with a hip or elbow, just enough to tilt the lens toward a new corner of the room. This new frame caught a small cluster forming. Gareth and Selena were still there, but now Aunt Ruby appeared, followed by Uncle Daniel. Daniel's presence surprised me. He wasn't the affectionate type. Not close to anyone, really. He floated through holidays with firm opinions and a loud voice, offering unsolicited advice and drinking half the whiskey in the house. But now he was here, part of this thing. The voices came into focus like someone was twisting a knob. Selena was the first to speak. "Just put him back there, behind the curtain. Nobody'll notice." Gareth chuckled. "He won't complain. He never does." Ruby: "That's why it works. Keep things smooth." Daniel's voice cut through. "He's useful, but he doesn't fit the picture." I blinked. He doesn't fit the picture. For a second, I forgot where I was. My ears rang. This wasn't about a seat. This was about an idea. A role. A box they'd kept me in and reinforced every time I agreed to make things easier. Every check I wrote, every time I stepped back for the sake of peace, I'd taught them how to treat me. And they'd learned. I remembered exactly where I was when they had this conversation, outside near the catering truck, arguing with the florist over double billing. While they were laughing about hiding me behind a curtain, I was making sure the damn event didn't collapse. They knew I wouldn't speak up. They counted on it. The audio quieted for a beat. I thought maybe that was the end. But then Daniel said something that changed everything. We need to talk about shifting the voting rights. Calder's not built to lead. He's too soft. That was a sentence I had to replay in my head. My name. Voting rights. Selena jumped in. Let Gareth hold everything. Calder won't push back. He'll think it's about keeping things organized. Then Gareth. Exactly. We'll word it like it's a favor to the family. He'll sign it. He always does. I didn't feel the chair under me anymore. Didn't feel the weight of my body. Just heat in my chest. Heavy, bitter heat rising fast. It wasn't just disrespect. It was strategy. It was structure. A plan to quietly box me out of decisions, money, control. My signature was their tool, not my shield. I whispered, mostly to myself, but Mason heard me. All these years, that's how they saw me. He didn't speak, just nodded once, eyes fixed on the screen. I couldn't even feel embarrassed anymore. That had passed. What replaced it was clarity. I thought about the house I refinanced to help Gareth's first startup, the emergency funds I pulled from my savings when Aunt Ruby claimed her roof was caving in, the business shares I held in trust because Dad had asked me to keep them safe. Safe from who? From me? Or for them? I'd thought they were family. Maybe a little messy, maybe tactless, but never conniving. Not this. And now I saw it all. Not just this wedding. It went back years, decades. I thought I was being the steady one, the dependable one. But to them, I was a tool, a placeholder with a wallet. My fingers curled tight around the edge of the seat, and Mason paused the video again. I hadn't realized it ended. He looked at me, waiting to speak. There's still one more clip from that night, he said quietly. I nodded, but this time something inside me had shifted. I didn't just want to know anymore. I needed to understand exactly what I was up against. I leaned in as Mason cued the final clip, sensing that whatever was coming next would tear open the last layer of denial I had left. After Mason pressed play and I leaned forward, I told myself I was ready, steady enough now to watch whatever came next, but that was a lie. My breathing was shallow, my palms damp. I wasn't scared in the usual sense. I wasn't afraid of blood or violence. I was afraid of hearing more of what I already knew, but never wanted to admit. The footage resumed. The camera angle had shifted slightly, just enough to show the edge of the lounge where they stood. You could see someone had nudged the table earlier, maybe with a hip or elbow, just enough to tilt the lens toward a new corner of the room. This new frame caught a small cluster forming. Gareth and Selena were still there, but now Aunt Ruby appeared, followed by Uncle Daniel. Daniel's presence surprised me. He wasn't the affectionate type, not close to anyone, really. He floated through holidays with firm opinions and a loud voice, offering unsolicited advice and drinking half the whiskey in the house. But now he was here, part of this thing. The voices came into focus like someone was twisting a knob. Selena was the first to speak. Just put him back there, behind the curtain. Nobody'll notice. Gareth chuckled. He won't complain. He never does. Ruby, that's why it works. Keep things smooth. Daniel's voice cut through. He's useful, but he doesn't fit the picture. I blinked. He doesn't fit the picture. For a second, I forgot where I was. My ears rang. This wasn't about a seat. This was about an idea, a role, a box they'd kept me in and reinforced every time I agreed to make things easier. Every check I wrote, every time I stepped back for the sake of peace, I'd taught them how to treat me, and they'd learned. I remembered exactly where I was when they had this conversation, outside near the catering truck, arguing with the florist over double billing. While they were laughing about hiding me behind a curtain, I was making sure the damn event didn't collapse. They knew I wouldn't speak up. They counted on it. The audio quieted for a beat. I thought maybe that was the end. But then Daniel said something that changed everything. We need to talk about shifting the voting rights. Calder's not built to lead. He's too soft. That was a sentence I had to replay in my head. My name. Voting rights. Selena jumped in. Let Gareth hold everything. Calder won't push back. He'll think it's about keeping things organized. Then Gareth. Exactly. We'll word it like it's a favor to the family. He'll sign it. He always does. I didn't feel the chair under me anymore. Didn't feel the weight of my body. Just heat in my chest. Heavy, bitter heat rising fast. It wasn't just disrespect. It was strategy. It was structure. A plan to quietly box me out of decisions, money, control. My signature was their tool, not my shield. I whispered mostly to myself, but Mason heard me. All these years? That's how they saw me? He didn't speak. Just nodded once, eyes fixed on the screen. I couldn't even feel embarrassed anymore. That had passed. What replaced it was clarity. I thought about the house I refinanced to help Gareth's first startup. The emergency funds I pulled from my savings when Aunt Ruby claimed her roof was caving in. The business shares I held in trust because Dad had asked me to keep them safe. Safe from who? From me? Or for them? I'd thought they were family. Maybe a little messy, maybe tactless, but never conniving. Not this. And now I saw it all. Not just this wedding. It went back years, decades. I thought I was being the steady one, the dependable one. But to them, I was a tool, a placeholder with a wallet. My fingers curled tight around the edge of the seat, and Mason paused the video again. I hadn't realized it ended. He looked at me, waiting to speak. There's still one more clip from that night, he said quietly. I nodded, but this time something inside me had shifted. I didn't just want to know anymore. I needed to understand exactly what I was up against. I leaned in as Mason cued the final clip, sensing that whatever was coming next would tear open the last layer of denial I had left. Mason didn't say a word as the clip began to load. The faint hum of the old desktop fan was the only sound in the room. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, hands laced together so tightly my knuckles went pale. The room was still dim, still cold, but something inside me was beginning to burn. The screen flickered back to life. The camera angle hadn't moved. It still sat forgotten on the table, capturing what it never should have seen. At first, the voices were low again, muffled by chatter in the distance and the shuffle of servers cleaning up after the cake had been cut. But then a deeper voice joined the conversation, one I recognized instantly. Leonard Hayes, Gareth's new father-in-law, Houston oil money. A man who liked to laugh loudly and shake your hand too hard, who once called me the bookkeeper brother when we first met. He strolled into the frame with a glass of bourbon in one hand and that smug tilt in his walk. He leaned toward Gareth and said, "Not bad, son. Real classy setup tonight. That flower wall must have cost a fortune." Gareth chuckled, half drunk already, and glanced at Selena. Easy to upgrade when Calder's paying. He doesn't even check receipts. Selena's laugh was quiet, but sharp. We padded the floral order by 15 grand. He'll never know the difference. I told the vendor to make it look a little more exotic, just so it passed. Leonard raised his glass and added, "Well played. Every family needs one generous fool." That one landed hard. 15 grand? They padded the budget? I blinked slowly. Once. Twice. Then Mason paused the clip on Leonard mid-toast, his smirk frozen on the screen like a punch that hadn't finished landing. I pressed my fingers to my temples. Gareth had told me they ran into some unexpected rush charges. I didn't question it. Not once. I just wired the extra. I even congratulated him on staying calm through the chaos. God, I even thanked him for taking on the logistics. Now I sat here watching proof that my brother and his wife had laughed while stealing from me. And not just stealing, mocking me for making it easy. Mason stayed quiet. He was good at that, giving silence the space to sting on its own. I sat back slowly, eyes unfocused. They didn't even try to hide it. He didn't respond. The footage picked back up. Gareth slouched further into the patio chair as the bourbon kept him loose. "You know," he said, "if Calder weren't around, we'd have real freedom. Everything gets stuck because we still have to pretend to care about him." Selena rolled her eyes, shaking her head. "Imagine the relief when he finally moves, or just gets tired of us." Leonard chuckled. "You mean he's still planning to update your mom's medical trust?" Gareth didn't hesitate. "Yeah, but once that's signed, we're cutting him out. He'll never see it coming." That's when I stood up. I didn't slam the chair back. I didn't yell. But I stood because sitting wasn't an option anymore. The room shifted, tilted. I had to steady myself with a hand on the edge of the desk. The lights above buzzed faintly, but all I could hear was Gareth's voice echoing in my ears, again and again. "Once that's signed, we're cutting him out." They weren't just humiliating me. They were erasing me. The trust, Mom's medical future, they were waiting for my signature. The same signature they'd use to upgrade their wedding, to secure their perfect image. And once they got what they wanted, they'd lock the door behind me. I turned slowly toward Mason. He looked like he wanted to say something, but didn't. Maybe he knew I wasn't ready to hear anything yet. I looked back at the frozen frame on the screen. Gareth's face half lit by the garden lights, mouth still half open from the last thing he'd said. I'd defended him so many times. To our cousins, to friends, even to myself. Every time someone implied he was entitled or that Selena was manipulative, I jumped in. "You don't know them like I do." Turns out I didn't either. I felt it, something breaking free inside me. Not grief, not quite rage. It was more exact than that. It was clarity. I had been loyal, dutiful, and they saw it as stupidity. As permission. But tonight changed something. There was no going back to ignorance. I had watched them plan my dismissal. I had heard my name passed around like an old tool they couldn't wait to throw away. I sat back down, slower this time, steadier. "They've been planning this for years," I said aloud, almost to myself. Mason gave a small nod. I met his eyes. "What else is in the final clip?" He hesitated for the first time that night, his finger resting above the keyboard, as if deciding whether I was ready for what came next. Mason's hand hovered above the keyboard, his eyes locking with mine for a moment longer than before. He didn't ask again if I was ready, just pressed play. The silence between us felt thick, like we were both bracing for something final. The screen lit up with the next clip. I recognized the setting immediately. That side hallway at the venue, the one vendors used to stash extra lighting rigs and unopened boxes. I had stepped in there at one point during the wedding, maybe 10, 15 minutes, just to take a phone call from a client. I remembered the air conditioning vent in the corner rattling faintly, the echo of footsteps down the corridor. But now, on screen, it was Gareth who stood in that same hallway. He leaned casually against the utility cart, tie loosened, drink in hand. Two men in suits I didn't recognize stood with him, co-workers by the look of their ID lanyards. They were all laughing, but it wasn't the kind of laughter that came from joy. It was the kind that followed a shared punchline at someone else's expense. Then Selena stepped into the frame, adjusting the straps of her dress like she'd just come from the dance floor. She didn't notice the camera sitting silently on the shelf behind her, tucked between crates of leftover tablecloths. "That your brother back there?" one of the men asked, jerking his thumb in the direction of the reception hall. Gareth nodded. "Yeah, that's Calder. The younger one, technically." One of the guys chuckled. "Really? He looks older than all of us." Gareth laughed louder than necessary. "That's because he carries stress that doesn't even belong to him. He takes every burden we hand him, never questions a thing." Selena chimed in, tone breezy. "He's like a walking wallet with a pulse." The other man grinned nervously, not quite sure how far he was allowed to laugh. But Gareth wasn't done. "He lives alone, works himself into the ground, and still thinks being loyal actually means something. He was basically raised to be used." Something in my chest folded in on itself. The words weren't a surprise, but hearing them spoken out loud, so casually, so confidently, like they were facts written in stone, it shook me. These weren't strangers talking behind my back. This was blood, and not just talking, laughing. I took a half step back from the screen. I don't even remember moving. Just needed space, air, something. I couldn't catch my breath. My heart wasn't racing. It was the opposite. Slow, dull, like it was trying to disappear into my ribs. "Is that how everyone sees me?" I asked, barely above a whisper. Mason didn't answer. He didn't have to, because I already knew. The clip kept rolling. Gareth leaned in closer to the others now, his voice dropping slightly. "We'll tell Mom Calder insisted on handling the trust. She'll believe it. She's always thought he likes things his way." Selena nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her shoulder. "And if he pushes back, we say he threatened us, that he's unstable, easy." One of the co-workers laughed uncomfortably. "That sounds a little harsh." Gareth waved him off. "He won't fight. Trust me. Calder can barely stand up for himself in a grocery line." I reached for the edge of the table, needing something solid beneath my hand. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It wasn't petty cruelty. It was strategy. It was a playbook. They weren't just cutting me out. They were writing a version of me that would justify it. One where I was controlling, aggressive, paranoid. And the worst part? It would work. They'd been shaping that story for years, little by little. A comment at Thanksgiving, a joke at Christmas, a moment of silence when I stepped into a room, and I had let them. I sank into the chair like the air had left my body. I couldn't even lift my arms for a second. My mind wandered, back to Dad's funeral, where I was the one who sorted the estate, stayed up late talking to Mom while Gareth disappeared to clear his head. Back to the time Gareth crashed his car, and I paid the deductible without a word, just so he wouldn't lose his job. None of it mattered. None of it was remembered. I pressed my palms to my eyes. The warmth there surprised me. I hadn't cried when Dad died, hadn't shed a tear when I lost my promotion to someone who used my work. But this? This unraveling of who I thought I was in the eyes of my family, it cracked something deep. "Why did I let them treat me this way?" I said, voice shaky, like it was being pulled from somewhere deep inside my chest. Mason didn't speak. He just walked over, grabbed a small bottle of water from the mini fridge, and placed it gently on the table in front of me. Then sat back down. "You didn't let them," he said softly. "You trusted them." I looked at him. That sentence sat there, like a stone dropped into still water. He wasn't just trying to make me feel better. He was right. Trust isn't weakness, but betrayal. That's a choice. And they had made it, again and again. I wiped my face with both hands, then pulled the bottle toward me, twisting the cap with a quiet click. I took one long sip, then another. I set it down and leaned forward. "If they think I won't fight." I paused, eyes fixed on the blank screen. "They're wrong." I stood up. The floor felt steady beneath my feet again, and I didn't even realize it yet. But in just a few short hours, I'd be facing the first real confrontation of my life. The sky outside Mason's studio had begun to shift from black to a soft gray, that in-between hush before sunrise. The city felt hushed too, like even the concrete needed a moment of silence after what I'd just absorbed. Mason handed me a small black USB drive, the backup of everything we'd watched. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. Just a firm nod as I slipped it into my jacket pocket and walked out the door. I didn't head home. I sat in my car for a minute, engine idling, the streetlight still flickering above. I stared through the windshield, gripping the steering wheel, willing my pulse to slow. But it didn't. And that was the moment I knew. This couldn't wait. I turned the key, shifted into drive, and pointed the car toward Gareth and Selena's house. They lived in a well-kept neighborhood on the west side of town, where every lawn looked like it belonged in a magazine, and every morning Jogger wore matching gear. It wasn't even 6 a.m., but a few porch lights were on and sprinklers hissed to life. I parked 2 houses down, walked the rest of the way. No planning, no rehearsing. Just one truth sitting in my chest like a boulder. I wasn't going to let them rewrite me anymore. I rang the bell. Gareth opened the door in gym shorts and a faded college t-shirt, rubbing sleep from his eyes. His surprise was genuine. His guard wasn't up yet. "Cal, what are you doing here, man? Everything okay?" I stepped past him without answering, brushing against his shoulder. My shoes landed heavy on the hardwood floor. Selena was in the kitchen, sipping coffee, one hand on her hip. She wore a silk robe and a look that said, "This better be quick." The air in the room chilled a few degrees when I said, "We need to talk." Gareth closed the door slowly. "All right, about what?" "I saw the footage," I said. His face flickered for a second, just a flash of recognition, but then he recovered. "Footage?" I didn't blink. "From the wedding. The camera in the vendor hallway. The open mic near the bar. All of it." Selena let out a breath through her nose. "Oh, that." Gareth stepped closer, voice low and soothing. "Calder, come on. It was a wedding. People drink. People joke. You're taking things too seriously." "Really?" I said. "You joked about stealing money from me? About cutting me out of Mom's trust? That's what jokes sound like to you?" He shook his head, arms raised in mock surrender. "You misunderstood. It wasn't like that. Selena had a few drinks. Everyone talks a little trash when they're relaxed. It didn't mean anything." Selena crossed her arms. "This is exactly why you can't be involved in major decisions. You're too sensitive." That one landed. It was the same script they'd used for years. make me feel irrational, overreacting, like I was always just one fragile step away from ruining everything. I looked at Gareth. You padded the wedding bills, lied about the totals, called me a walking wallet with a pulse, and now you're gaslighting me? Gareth gave me a patronizing smile, the kind you'd give a child having a tantrum. Every wedding goes over budget, Cal. You're just under a lot of stress. I get it. But don't twist things just because you're feeling emotional. That word, emotional, stung worse than it should have. They'd always used it like a leash. Tug it when I got too close to truth. For a second, I faltered. I could feel my old instincts trying to drag me back under. Just leave. Don't make a scene. Keep the peace. That's what good sons do. Good brothers. But then I remembered Selena's voice from the footage. The confidence in it. The cruelty. The way she said I was lucky Gareth still kept me around. And just like that, the spell broke. You act like you're the victim, Selena said now, stepping forward, her voice sharper than before. But you've always been dead weight. Gareth carries this family. You're just a guilt trip wrapped in a bank account. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. And Gareth, he didn't object, didn't defend me. He just stared, jaw tight. Then he said, Calder, don't start something you can't win. And that was it. That was the moment I knew. They weren't sorry. They weren't scared. They believed I was too small to matter, too quiet to fight, too loyal to ever turn on them. But they were wrong. I took one step closer to Gareth, looked him dead in the eye. You used me. You lied to me. You stole from me. And you thought I'd stay quiet forever. Selena rolled her eyes and let out a short laugh. You will. I turned to her. No, I won't. At the corner of my vision, I caught movement outside. The neighbor across the street, walking his golden retriever, had paused, his brow furrowed as he glanced toward the open door. He must have felt it too. Whatever storm had just gathered in that room. I looked back at Gareth and Selena, my voice low and steady. You'll hear from me soon, and next time, it won't be a conversation. I turned and walked toward the door. Gareth called out after me, that old panic creeping into his voice now. Calder, don't make this bigger than it is. I didn't turn around. I didn't say another word. I just kept walking, step after step down that pristine driveway, toward the car, toward whatever came next. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of losing their approval. I was finally done begging for it. As I drove away, my hands still trembling slightly, I realized something important. Gareth's greatest fear wasn't that I'd lash out. It was that I'd finally stop letting him win. It wasn't until I turned the corner from Gareth's house that I realized I was breathing differently. Not faster, just fuller. Like something inside me had been locked away for years, and that lock finally gave out. The silence in my car felt earned, but it didn't last. As I waited at a red light, my phone lit up. 5 missed calls. All from Gareth. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. Selena, of course, first pretending to check on me. Are you okay? We're worried. Then slipping in control. You're blowing this out of proportion. Think of Mom. Then sharpening, if you go down this road, you're tearing this family apart. The kind of guilt they were so good at weaponizing. I stared at her last message a long second, then turned the phone face down on the passenger seat and kept driving. This wasn't over. They'd try to get to Mom first, and I wasn't going to let that happen. Her house still looked the same as it always had. Quiet, warm, windows open to the breeze. It sat at the end of a cul-de-sac where the oak trees met above the street like hands in prayer. Her porch light was still on, even though it was mid-afternoon. She always forgot to turn it off. I parked in the driveway, took a breath, and walked in. "Mom," I called gently. "In here," she said from the den, her voice a little tired. I stepped inside and was about to speak when I heard the front door behind me creak open again. It was Aunt Ruby, and just behind her, Uncle Daniel. I knew that look on her face. I'd seen it at every Thanksgiving, every birthday. That tight, forced smile that came before a lecture disguised as concern. "We heard you caused a scene this morning," she said. Uncle Daniel didn't even pretend. He crossed his arms and said, "You're upsetting your mother. Is that what you want?" I stood in the middle of the room, trying to ignore how Mom's gaze dropped to the floor. "Apologize to Gareth," Uncle Daniel added. "Put this nonsense to rest." I looked at him calmly. "I know what Gareth said. I have it recorded." That stopped them. Their faces didn't shift much, but just enough. A blink too long. A pause in breath. "You don't know what you think you know," Daniel muttered. Wrong answer, because in that sentence was the confirmation I didn't need, but got anyway. They'd known. They all had. I didn't get time to press further. The door swung open with force. Gareth walked in like he owned the walls, talking before he even crossed the threshold. "There you are," he barked. "Calder, what the hell are you doing?" He didn't wait for me to answer. "You show up at my house, accuse me of things you don't understand, and now what? You're trying to poison Mom against me?" He turned to her. "He's trying to take control of everything. He's twisting stuff from the wedding because he's jealous." Selena was with him now. She moved toward Mom, resting a hand on her shoulder like it belonged there. "We're worried about you," she said to me, loud enough for the entire room. "This isn't healthy, Calder." Gareth jabbed a finger in my direction. "You're going to break this family apart just to feel important." Their voices rose like a coordinated song. Accusation layered over guilt, over worry, over self-righteous grief. I didn't move. My mother looked back and forth, overwhelmed. For a second, I felt the edge of panic, like I was falling underwater and everyone was talking above me. And then I remembered. The drive, the footage, the truth. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the USB, slid it into the side of Mom's old laptop sitting open on the table. "I'm not going to argue," I said. Selena scoffed. "What is this?" I clicked play. Her voice filled the room. "He's like a walking wallet with a pulse." Gareth's laugh followed, then his words, clear as daylight. "Once he signs the trust, we're cutting him out. He'll never see it coming." You could have heard a pin drop. Aunt Ruby sat down like someone had pulled the strings from her knees. Uncle Daniel looked at the wall like it had betrayed him. Gareth stopped mid-rant, lips parted but no sound coming out. Selena's hand dropped from Mom's arm. I paused the audio, not because I needed to, but because I'd said what needed saying, without saying a word. Gareth was the first to speak. "It was a joke. You're taking it out of context." Selena nodded quickly, face flushed. "Exactly. You're editing clips. This is selective." But no one moved to agree with them, not even Ruby. And Mom, she just sat there, her hand resting on the table, eyes wet. But the tears weren't for me. They were for the version of her son that just shattered. I turned to her and said evenly, "There's more, and if I need to, I'll bring it all out." I wasn't threatening. I was promising. I turned to leave. I'm not fighting you, I said to my mother. I'm fighting lies. And with that, I stepped past Gareth, who flinched slightly. Whether in shame or fear, I didn't care. Outside, the light had shifted. The heat of the afternoon pressed against my skin. Behind me, the door stayed open. And from inside, I heard Gareth's voice crack. Not in anger this time, but fear. Fear of what I might do next. That was the shift. And it was no longer my burden to carry. I didn't sleep much that night, not out of unrest, but clarity. My body felt like it had finally decided to stop bracing for impact. No more flinching, no more rehearsing the perfect response in my head. Just stillness. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, washing the room in pale light. I sat up slowly, the stiffness in my shoulders replaced by something unfamiliar. Resolve. I didn't check my phone right away. I didn't need to. I already knew Gareth wouldn't let yesterday stand. For people like him, silence wasn't defeat. It was strategy. Sure enough, by the time I poured a cup of coffee, my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. Gareth brought a lawyer to the house this morning. He says you're threatening the family. I stared at it a moment. No panic. Just a shift in temperature, like the room got colder but not darker. I didn't reply. I just grabbed the USB drive off the kitchen table, slipped it in my pocket, and walked out the door. By the time I pulled up to Mom's house, there was already a small audience forming. A couple of neighbors stood across the street with their arms folded, pretending to chat about their dogs. Gareth loved a stage. He stood at the edge of the driveway with a man in a blazer and a leather briefcase. Selena hovered close, looking like she'd just stepped out of a catalog, poised, perfect, poisonous. The minute I stepped out of the car, Gareth's voice went up. There he is, he said, as if announcing me at a town hall. We just want to protect Mom from you, Calder. He held up a folder like it was evidence of a crime. Protect her from what? I said, calm. He smirked. From manipulation. From emotional coercion. From whatever it is you've been doing lately. The lawyer didn't say much. Just opened the folder Gareth handed him and gave me a quick glance. I stepped forward slowly. What exactly is in there? The lawyer answered before Gareth could. Your brother claims you attempted to pressure him and his wife into signing financial documents related to the trust. These are communications that... Let me guess, I interrupted. Text messages? The lawyer nodded. Among other things. I held out a hand. May I? He looked at Gareth, who hesitated, just for a second, but passed it over. Inside were printed screenshots, emails, even a spreadsheet. But what stopped me cold were the text threads, doctored, dates altered, my words rearranged or stripped of context. They made it look like I was leveraging money against him, threatening him with legal action if he didn't obey. The tone was twisted. The intent wasn't mine. You forged these, I said quietly. Gareth rolled his eyes. I cleaned them up, fixed some formatting. That's not formatting, I said. That's fabrication. The lawyer's expression shifted slightly, his stance no longer quite so solid. Before anyone could speak again, a voice chimed in from behind us. Excuse me, sorry, I'm not trying to interrupt. We all turned. A man in a black work shirt with a company logo approached the yard cautiously. I was supposed to meet Mrs. Holt about a lighting refund from the wedding, he said, holding a clipboard. But, if this is a bad time... Hold on, I said, recognizing the logo. He worked for the venue. He looked between us and lowered his voice. I don't want to cause trouble, he added, but if this is about invoices, someone from the wedding staff asked us to send a few of the bills under a different name, said to list the florist charges under a third-party coordinator. I thought it was odd, but the name was Selena Holt. Gareth's face locked. Selena turned to him sharply. The vendor, realizing he'd stepped into something bigger, took a cautious step back. I just figured if it's about money, you'd want to know. Thank you, I said genuinely. That helps. He nodded and quickly excused himself. I looked at Gareth. That undercuts everything in your folder. His jaw flexed, but he didn't speak. Then I pulled the USB from my pocket and held it up. This contains everything from the wedding. Audio, video, full conversations. You mocked me, lied to me, stole from me. You schemed to cut me out of Mom's trust. And now you forged evidence. The lawyer blinked. You want to tell your client, I said, that legal action based on forged records can go both ways. He didn't answer, but he didn't look comfortable either. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I pressed play on my phone. The clip was short, only a few seconds, but I chose it carefully. Selena's voice came through first. He's a walking wallet with a pulse. Then Gareth, once he signs the trust, we're cutting him out. It was like someone had knocked the air out of the whole yard. My mother, who'd stepped out onto the porch at some point, closed her eyes. The pain on her face wasn't directed at me. Selena stepped back as if she could hide in plain sight. Gareth, however, didn't move. Then he snapped. He lunged forward, his voice cracking. Turn it off! You think you can ruin me with this? A neighbor across the street raised his phone, clearly recording. Selena reached out to stop Gareth, but he jerked away. You want a war? He shouted at me. You think this makes you powerful? I didn't answer him. Instead, I looked at my mother. I'm done protecting someone who chose to hurt me, I said, handing her the USB. Everything you need is on this, not rumors, not gossip, the truth. Then I looked Gareth in the eyes for the last time. You should have thought about what I'd do once I stopped letting you win. I turned and walked away. No shouting, no curtain call. Just a final step off a stage I never asked to be on. And as I pulled out of the driveway, one thing became clear. The real battle wasn't with Gareth anymore. It was with the part of me that believed I ever needed his approval. As I drove home, the streets looked the same, but nothing felt familiar. It wasn't peace I felt, at least not right away. It was more like a quiet hum beneath the surface, like I was no longer standing on someone else's expectations, just still, for the first time in years. When I stepped inside, the house greeted me in silence. Not an uncomfortable one, just clean, untouched. No arguments echoing off the walls, no words hanging in the air, waiting to be swallowed. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat on the edge of the couch and just breathed. That alone felt strange. I'd spent so long bracing for the next blow, the next twist, the next demand. Now, it was just me. The grief didn't rush in. It crept. It came with the realization that I hadn't lost a brother. I'd let go of an illusion. The idea that if I were good enough, giving enough, patient enough, maybe I could hold the family together. But the truth was, the family had been broken long before I stopped holding it up. A few hours later, Mason called. Hey, he said gently. You still standing? Yeah, I said, weirdly steady. I saw the neighbor's video. Gareth really went full theater, huh? Full meltdown, I muttered. He paused. You okay? I leaned my head back. I think I might be. Mason updated me. The wedding vendor had followed up via email, confirming Selena's name was used to reroute invoices. My lawyer had the clips, the documents, the fabricated texts, all lined up in case Gareth tried anything else. The deck, for once, wasn't stacked against me, but I felt none of the triumph I imagined I would, just weightlifting off me, piece by piece. It was almost 9 p.m. when my phone buzzed again. This time, it was from my mother. I saw everything. Please come talk to me. I stared at the message for a long while. My thumb hovered over the screen, not out of hesitation, but care. This was the one relationship I hadn't made sense of yet, and maybe never fully would, but I owed that boy I used to be a quiet truth. The night air was crisp as I drove over. The streets were empty, and for once, that felt good. No witnesses, no interruptions. When I stepped inside her home, it smelled like the past, lavender and wood polish. She was already at the kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, voice soft. She looked older than she had the day before. Not physically, necessarily, but like the years had finally caught up. "I didn't know," she whispered. I sat across from her, resting my hands on the table. "I know." She looked down. "I should have seen it. I should have asked more questions. I let Gareth shape the story too often. I didn't say anything right away. Then I said, 'Seeing it now matters more.'" We sat in that stillness. Then, slowly, I explained, not with rage, not with guilt, what it had been like. The years of being minimized, guilted, used. The way Gareth made loyalty feel like servitude. The way Selena sharpened every edge and still smiled through it. She listened, really listened. "I'm not asking for sides," I said. "I just needed you to see it wasn't in my head." She nodded, tears welling. "It wasn't." "I'm not going to be cut out of the trust," I added plainly, "and I won't let Gareth keep manipulating things." "I don't want him here," she said quietly. "He came earlier, tried to make it seem like it was all your fault, but the neighbors saw the video. 2 of them confronted him on the sidewalk. I think it shook him." I nodded. She took a long breath. "Selena texted me too. Something about fixing things and misunderstandings." I didn't answer. "She texted me too," I said. One line. "We need to fix this. Please call." "Will you?" "No." I stayed a little longer, long enough for her to feel heard. Not fixed, not forgiven, just heard. And then I stood up and said something I didn't know I'd been carrying. "I need some space, not from you, but from everything else. From Gareth. From Selena. From the role I played in all this." She nodded. "I understand. I'm not the caretaker of their chaos anymore." The words felt final, and I didn't flinch. Back home, I walked into my office and set the USB drive down on the desk. Same desk where, months ago, I kept the wedding invoice folder. Back then, it was a symbol of hope, trust, and blind faith. Now, the drive wasn't about evidence anymore. It wasn't a weapon. It was closure. I didn't need to replay it again. The footage had done its job. I knew the truth, and I knew my worth. I stood in the middle of the room and thought about that younger version of me. The boy who thought if he just stayed quiet, he'd earn his place. The man who thought gratitude meant swallowing every slight. The son who believed love required loyalty even when loyalty came back empty. I don't resent him. I honor him. He did the best he could with what he knew. But I'm not him anymore. What comes next won't be fireworks. It won't be revenge. It'll be slow mornings and quiet evenings. A little peace. A little space. Maybe finally, something that belongs just to me. I didn't lose a family that day. I just stopped pretending one existed at my expense.